So I was just saying that I thought of doing Chassidut because in a way it's connected to what we've been doing with the Reform movement. I mean, it comes not long before it, 1770s, and so it's only 40 years before. Both of these things, in a way, are emerging out of the. Certainly, Reform emerges out of the Enlightenment. Does Chassidut emerge out of the Enlightenment? Does it emerge out of people, there just being a need because people are not connecting to Judaism unless they're studying Talmud? I think there are many times, I think there's kind of a push and pull within Jewish history. Every time that Judaism becomes like too, solely intellectual, there's a more spiritualizing movement that emerges. Chassidut, Musar, maybe the early pietists of Ashkenaz, I think that's a little bit different. It's really Musar and Hasidus. So I think that's part of the question that we have to ask ourselves is why Chassidut and why then? Kabbalah has obviously, the Kabbalah of the Ari has already been around for hundreds of years by the time Chassidut emerges and changes the prayer book to be more based on that. Brings into, when you read about it, the early criticism of Chassidut is not so much that they're not studying Talmud, it's that it looks really weird. They're doing things like speaking in tongues. I think we invented it before the Christians did. They're, whirling. They're doing all kinds of things in prayer as a way of connecting to God. You think that that's just like the Nanachs or something, but that's actually a very early manifestation of Chassidut, is this sort of ecstatic spirituality. So I think the other thing to keep in mind is to what extent is this impacted by Shabtai Tzvi, right? Shabtai Tzvi is 100 years earlier. Shabtai Tzvi apostatized to Islam in 1666. But we know that Sabbatianism is still alive and well for years after Shabtai Tzvi dies. It was, we can't fathom how pervasive Sabbatianism was, such that, the great proof of it is, as people may know, that Rabbi Yaakov Emden accused Rabbi Yonasan Eibshitz. These are two of the most, well-known, famous, great Haredi rabbis of that generation. And Rabbi Yaakov Emden accuses Rabbi Yonasan Eibshitz, and this is in the 1750s, 1760s. I think that's when it is. They have to look at the exact date. He accuses him of being a follower of Shabtai Tzvi, a false messiah, which is just shocking. That it's even an issue 100 years later or 75 years later is interesting, is surprising. And the idea that you could be a great rabbi and you could harbor the belief that a false messiah who became a Muslim from 75 years ago is actually the Messiah. That this wasn't laughed out of the Jewish community is amazing. It was a machloket. It was a head-to-head fierce argument that produced books upon books for years. We can't understand the power of Shabtai Tzvi. The only way we could have an inkling of it would be, I'm not comparing them at all, but the sense that Lubavitcher Rebbe was the Messiah. I think a lot of people believe that. I myself am not, think that's potentially true. Now it's much easier because he didn't become a Muslim. You would think that Shabtai Tzvi becoming a Muslim that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. That was read as part of the process, of elevating the sparks. It's based on Kabbalah, the Kabbalah of the Arizal, which, is already from the early 1500s. You have the Frankists later on, in the 1700s, right? Jacob Frank, who is a follower, sort of resurrects Sabbatianism, and believes that you have to do the opposite of everything in the Torah. And that that's the way to sort of, is all of this about messianism? Of course it is. And of course, messianism is something that rears its head in Jewish history for good reason. Number one, it's a very central tenet of our, not only our belief system, but I think our vision about the world. But also when times are very difficult for the Jewish people, whether that's physically or spiritually, messianism seems like, that it makes sense that that's when messianism would emerge. So there's all of these factors. There's the Enlightenment, there's Sabbatianism, there's messianism, there's the difficulties of the Jewish people living where they're living. So what we're really talking about, the very beginnings of Chassidut is in the 1760s, early 1770s, and it's in the Ukraine. It seems to be in Vilna, actually. And of course, that's where the response begins, is in Vilna. And the most famous opponent of Chassidut, of course, is the Vilna Gaon, who eventually excommunicated the Chasidim. Who are we talking about? Very early Hasidic rabbis. Obviously, the Baal Shem Tov is a little bit earlier. These are really the students of the Baal. The Baal Shem Tov seems to be a little bit under the radar, really. It's the students of the Baal Shem Tov. So this is people like Rabbi Aaron Karliner. It's the first rabbi of Chabad, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi. It's that generation, students of the Maggid of Mesrich. And the first book that's written, let me share my screen with you, against the first sort of polemical work against the Chasidim is this book. And it's written in Vilna in 1772. And it is signed by the Vilna Gaon and several others. And it's called Zamir Aritzim V'Charvot Tzurim. The singing nightingales and the flint, the swords of flint. I think it's a quote from a pasuk. So obviously, first pages of books are very important, as are hakdamos, as are introductions. This is really the first time that I'm looking at this. I mean, part of the reason that I want to do this is that I'm sort of interested in it. You always hear about the Vilna Gaon with the Chasidim and excommunication, but what did that mean? What were the issues? It's not something that I'm actually so familiar with. This is really, and I have not really had a chance to read much academic work about this, but I'm more familiar with them than Eibschitz controversy because I studied it in school. But I think this is important, and this is the first written opposition to Chasidim. So we'll look together at this. This is the first page. I couldn't really find it online. Usually it's easy to find these things online, but I don't know if I looked the notes. I'll have to check. But this is on the, I'll send you the link. This is on the website of the Hebrew University, of the National Library of Israel. There are some books, some old books on the National Library of Israel that you can just open up like this. You can't download them, but you can pop them open and see, and the whole thing is online. It's only about 30 pages, and that's 48 pages. So a lot of them are blank. It's really more like 35 pages. You can also find, if you Google it, you'll find them on auction websites. This book sells for quite a bit. I think I saw one for like $50,000. So I don't know how many are extant. But Lezemer Aritzim. Now, why call it this, right? Charvot Tzurim obviously means swords of flint, right? These are, in the ancient world, the flint rock is very sharp. That's why Abraham uses it to circumcise himself. So a sword, an early sword before, I guess, iron is going to be made out of flint. So this is an attack, Charvot Tzurim. What's Zamir Aritzim, the Song of the Nightingales? So that may be a reference to the Chasidim. I think that's a reference to the Chasidim, that they're singing. They're. I think part of the big opposition here early on is to the ecstatic prayer. So lezamer aritzim lahachris kol choche so hakutzim. So to the singers, the nightingale singers, and to cut off kol ha this one word, you think? This could be two words. Kol hachoche so hakutzim. They did call themselves Chasidim early on. Achivim v'silunim. Part of the criticism also against Chasidim was that, why are you calling yourselves Chasidim? Ma'arin chamshalhin me'inam me'ein nirfash mukor mashchis mashchesam. So this is hard to make out all these words. The source of their destruction, that which they're doing that is destroying things. Bahem mumbam, they have a mum in them. They have a blemish. They have a problem with them. Asovavim et hashoshana, that surround the rose. Ginat vered, a garden of flowers, of vered, of roses. Kerem chamer beis Yisrael. The Jewish people is a vineyard. The shovev nisivot uleleches archot iklaklot lochim Hashem polei ha'avon v'shalom Yisrael. So I think what this paragraph is trying to say, and if anybody can make out more of the Hebrew, let me know, because I'm having a hard time with this. But it's very poetic, obviously. I think what it's saying is that we're coming to surround the Jewish people like we surround a rose. Jewish people are sometimes compared to a rose, Shoshana. And like it says in the pasuk, Shoshana bein hachochin, like a rose among the thorns. And we're coming to protect the Jewish people from these, from the Zemer Aritzim, these singers. And hopefully I'll have more time to look at this before we do it next time. But V'hama'atik hosif nosef al divrei ha'igeret azot. There's the publisher is there's more than just this letter. Lashon tzach l'mod b'nei Yehuda lirot b'mo ofel. There we go. L'tarbut anashim hachotim. This is they brought darkness. This group that is sinning. Shergavru v'lo la'amuna. They have become strong but not faithful. Chevrat haksilim, the group of fools, asher b'chashka v'tahalichu, asher b'chashecha, that are in darkness and they walk. Ki afilotenam, they are walking in darkness. Ela asher yinazru mikadshe b'nei Yisrael, asher nitzvu livadena. They are making themselves separated, like a Nazarite, from the Holy of Israel. In other words, part of the criticism here, it seems, of the Chasidim, at least on this introductory page, is that they are separating themselves, doing something new, right? In other words, it's already, remember, the Enlightenment's already here by this time, 1770s, right? When's the French Revolution? 1750? Know this. Let's see. I'm sure you know this.
1780s.
I think.
1780?
Yeah.
Okay. But you're right.
It's after us.
It's the 1790s. That's interesting. So it's an interesting question. To what extent is when does sort of enlightenment begin? Now, obviously, we have very early Jewish enlightenment, even before that, with what's his name? Blank. But my sense is that the Enlightenment is already here, and maybe part of the fear is the Enlightenment, not just Shabtai Tzvi, and not just Chasidim doing something different. Obviously, the Chassam Sofer is not around yet. I mean, he's around, but this is early on. And, so the idea that just anything new is forbidden, that I don't think is where we're coming from yet. On the other hand, maybe that's always true. Hamalin tochen chol ptuchin kodesh knafim kanfei hachasida. Right, a chasida is a bird. It's a
Stork.
A stork. I think this might be a pun on chasid. They are opening up their wings like the wings of the chasida. It's the light of the wicked in darkness. The light of the wicked is like darkness. They're quoting psukim about kina, about using swords to be zealous for God. To take vengeance for God. Right? In other words, this is change and it's dangerous. So we will, now it's published, interestingly, it wasn't published in Vilna, published in Alaksanits, which is in the Ukraine. It's not far, it's around that area, but, and then it does talk about, of course, it talks about the king whenever you publish a book. And it's the publication of the family of Margolios. And then it tells us the year. And you remember from other things we've read what pasuk you quote to say what year it is very significant, right? Because you want to get a shin, a lamed, a beis, and a resh, you could quote a lot of psukim. But the pasuk that they quote is Sichroti me'alai, cut away from me, kol tulu me'alai et tulunot b'nei Israel, the wicked of the Jewish people, or the complainers of the Jewish people, the murmurers of the Jewish people. So, obviously they're picking this pasuk for a reason. It's in a certain way. It's presenting what's about to happen. Okay, so we will.
And so the authors of this, or who are the authors of this again?
So that doesn't seem so clear. I don't think it seems quite clear that Vilna Gaon did not write it. It seems like it's. I read something about it being two rabbis in Vilna. But it seems like it was sort of written by the Kehila in Vilna, but it's signed by the Vilna Gaon and several other people. We can also look at the back page and see what it's signed by. So I'll try and figure out who exactly wrote it, who penned it. But it's more like a kind of. It's not really a book. I mean, it's more like a letter or a pamphlet. So I'm not positive exactly if we know who wrote it. It sort of emerged from the Kehila in Vilna, but the Gaon definitely was behind it. I mean, it's because he is extremely opposed to Chassidut and the Chasidim that that this all takes off. I mean, he is the seat of power and has incredible respect. Obviously in Vilna and other places, and well deserved. Okay. All right. Well,
very good. Thank you.